Hi, I'm Fred Satilli, and this is episode 23 for the Voters Union of Accountability Nation. I'm calling this one The Importance of Planning Long Term. And for quite a while now, I've heard people say we're going to take back the district, take back the state, take back the government. And everybody who says this seems to have a lot of enthusiasm, but no ability to create an effective long-term plan. Now, those of you who know me know that I read a lot, and I've always said that reading makes you smart and TV makes you stupid. And I've had a lot of conversations with people who just watch something on TV and they want to react to it, and this is exactly the kind of diversion that the people who create TV want you to have. They don't want you to stick to your long-term plan. They want you to set your hair on fire and panic over something that just happened. And whatever it was that just happened will be gone in 24 hours, 48 hours, or whatever it is, and you'll be setting your hair on fire with something new the following day or a few days later. And that's exactly what they want you to do. And that's exactly what keeps you from staying on track. Now, I want to talk about three important books, and I know that just saying the word books is a turnoff for most people, but the first one is Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Now, I've talked about this before, and it's important that you understand that when Hillary Clinton was coming to power and when Barack Obama was coming to power, over and over and over it was stated that this was their playbook. This was Barack Obama's playbook. Hillary Clinton in college did some kind of paper, important paper, maybe it was her master's thesis or whatever it might have been, on Saul Alinsky. And in fact, Hillary Clinton started out as a conservative, but after going to college and reading Rules for Radicals, getting kind of in love with Saul Alinsky, she went hard to the left. And of course, Obama was trained to be hard to the left from birth. So these people use this book. Now, I went about a year ago to a very large gathering of wealthy, dedicated Republicans. And I stood up in front of those people and I said, this is a copy of Rules of Radicals. This is the playbook of a great many Democrats. And how many of you have read this book? Raise your hand. And no one in the room raised their hand. And one lady blurted out, well, I read part of it, and I couldn't believe that these people, why wouldn't you read the playbook of the opposing party or something, or, a system that you're trying to defeat? I'm not saying that you should adopt those methods, but I certainly need you to see them, understand them, know when they're being incorporated, and think. Once you see what they're doing, ask yourself, what can I do to stop this, or what strategy can I make that will counteract this? And nobody seems to do that. Everybody who runs for office now seems to want to do exactly the same thing that they did 2 years ago that didn't work then, it didn't work 4 years ago, it didn't work 6 years ago. I recently attended a meeting of a candidate who, this is it, this is the 30-day push, we got to do it. So can you, and there was very few people at this meeting. It wasn't like hundreds and hundreds of people, there was a dozen people. And this guy said, can you donate a little bit of money, $100 or something, or can you make some phone calls, or maybe walk house to house and hang something on someone's door, and how anybody would think that effort would swing an election, that person is going to lose at worst 80-20, at best 70-30. And the reason that I can say that campaign will be lost is because it frankly wasn't even, this particular candidate wasn't even as good as the one 2 years ago or the one 4 years ago. And there was nothing new, nothing exciting. No electricity in the campaign. There was really no reason. These people who run for office, they want to come out and go, hi, I'm a good guy, I'm a nice lady, I go to church, I was in the military, I have a family, I grew up here, I went to college, I have a degree, I'm really a good guy, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something about the homelessness, about the economy, about the ecology, education, for the children. And, there's nothing there that an undecided voter or a negative voter can sink their teeth in and say, wow, I better take a second look at this person. I better consider him. It's really a terrible thing. Now, this is why these incumbents stay in office forever. And I'm dedicated to draining the swamp. There's a great big banner at the top of my webpage for VUAN that says the swamp draining machine, and people just aren't getting it. Now, the next book that they don't get the idea that it's got to be long term. So now we're going to talk about the next book, which is the famous Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. And this guy literally introduced communism, a whole new way to rise to power and oppress people. Some people call it communism, some people call it Marxism, because there's different flavors of communism, but pure Marxism, you have to read the book. But what we find is that no one read the book. Now, Karl Marx in his own lifetime did not see communism. He died before Soviet Russia. And by the way, the biggest country in the world tried this. It's not like some little tiny place like North Korea or Venezuela thought maybe they could do it. And, it's a huge international, was a superpower, a first world power, decided that this was the avenue of success for them. And so they tried it for many, many years. And they when they started out, they used a really brutal system. They killed everybody who didn't agree. They sent them off to work camps. They depended on work camps to support their economy, essentially slave labor. So anybody who rose up against them, even casually, even said, I'm not too crazy about this guy, they were sent off to a work camp, and they usually died there. So communism, the Communist Manifesto, the problem with the Communist Manifesto was ideological. It didn't say how to achieve success with it. It just said that if somehow you could make this work, you'd have success. And some guys went in and they tried it, and they did their best, but they used military strength and police brutality and everything to try to do this. But of course it failed, because it was destined to fail. It was doomed to fail. All socialism, democracy becomes socialism, socialism becomes communism, and it falls under its own weight. Now, we all know that. Now, you would think that the Communist Party, they realized that they needed to take over America. And so they read another book, which I'm not going to talk about, but they realized to do this, they had to change the very culture of the country. And they realized to change the culture, they had to do it through the schools. You know this. They had to do it through the media. They had to do it through Hollywood. So they started writing books and making movies and having news reports and getting people to move their center-oriented thinking a little to the left, a little more to the left, a little more to the left. If you go back and watch TV shows from the late 50s, early 60s, you see a very family-oriented world. Well, a family is antithetical to a government that wants to control. Just the way a really good self-sufficient farm is antithetical to government control. Anytime that there's a power structure that an individual can depend on that's not the government, that power structure has to be destroyed. And of course, obviously, right now, the big destruction is against the church. Right now, this is November of 2020. I guess it's October of 2020. they're trying to destroy the church because people's faith in the church supersedes that of faith of the government, and so the government has to destroy that. So family, self-reliant farm, self-reliant individuals, the church, anything like that has to be destroyed so that the government has virtually no competition. Now, communism came to America in a big, it came before World War II, but in a real big way, immediately after World War II. There was all kind of people who decided to try this or to enforce this, and they thought that this was their path to escalating their own value of life, their own wealth. They were going to be party members, and those who aren't party members go to the work camps. Those who are party members, they get the good food and the good homes and all the good things. So they started to work on it. And little by little, through the decades, over the last 70 years, have brought us to the point now where we have open communist candidates that are saying, vote for me because I'm a communist. Nobody's hiding it. Nobody's, trying to deny it or anything like that. You have real super hyper radical people that are trying to capture the imagination of the American people, and the American people are this far away from buying it. They really are. They're so close. There are so many that were indoctrinated in school, were indoctrinated by idiotic TV shows or, movies, indoctrinating movies, that kind of thing. So we have a real problem. So now we have to do something about that, and what we're going to do about that can't be done with a door hanger, a bumper sticker, a cute little slogan, a nice person with a big smile who went to church and went to college and they have a family and they were born here. All that stuff doesn't matter. It's going to be a very long-term, gradual process of bringing them back to the center from the far left. A lot of these are generational. You have parents who are big lefties and they're raising kids who are big lefties. This is especially prevalent in single-family homes, all that kind of thing. So I've tried to get people to understand that the only way you're going to win and the only way you're going to have any kind of substantive win is by changing the culture of the voter. And that doesn't mean we're going to have a campaign 60 days out of an election and we're going to win one specific little area and that's going to make all the difference, because it's not. You have to get all the voters to start to question their feelings about the way they vote and to consider over the years to vote for different things, to express, to analyze themselves, for them to look at themselves and say, what are my values? What do I want? Well, I want a safe neighborhood, and I want a good job, and I want happy children, and I want to feel that I've done something in life and had some success. People by and large don't. They say, oh, I just want to lay back on a sofa and watch TV and collect a check. That is not where it's at. That is not most people. There's always a few of those, and we've afforded them, and now we're making more. We have a culture where that's acceptable. That used to never be acceptable. We had an accountability nation. Now we have denial of accountability, and I've talked about that many times. So what has to happen is a very slow retraining of every voter district, of every group. We have to get every person to think about who's in office and not think about who wants to go into office. It doesn't matter who wants to go into office. The idea is to drain the swamp, to get the incumbent out, because right now we have a government with a very low approval rating that's all full of incumbents. Almost all of those people are bad. Almost all of those people have turned their back on their communities, turned their back on the voters, and they're doing whatever's in their own best interest. So you have to get people to, rather than have a knee-jerk reaction to keep the incumbent in, the knee-jerk reaction has to be to get the incumbent out. So The third book I'm going to talk about is my new book that just came out. And I wrote this book, and it's very, very easy reading. It's 60,000 words, 200 pages. It's probably 6 to 8 hours of actual reading. Now, the story is fun. It's a fun story to read. You're going to laugh when you read it, and you're going to say, this Fred Satilli is a goofy guy. Look at this crazy story. I can't believe he came up with all these ideas. This is really ridiculous. But in amongst that is the complete and total plan on how to transform society, because that's basically what the book is about, is how to transform society. Now, you can read a philosophical book, and I've read dozens and dozens of them, where philosophy is discussed and only philosophy is discussed. But several decades ago, a woman named Ayn Rand, who grew up in the Soviet bloc and really hated that, wanted to communicate to America how bad that was, she wrote a number of books, but the two most famous ones are The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. Now, both of those stories are about a heroic man who stood his ground against the government and against the paradigm, and he had this philosophical view, and his philosophical view was very different than what society was doing at the time. And Ayn Rand had some real good ideas about that, and she expressed them, and her thing was called individualism, and she wanted, or objectivism. She thought that her view was very objective. Many people thought that it wasn't, but she had a very definite, certain characterization of her philosophy that she expressed. Now, her books were bestsellers, and colleges even had courses in these books. At that time, they were the #1 philosophical book sold in America, a book about philosophy. The only book that you could consider philosophical that outsold that, of course, was the Bible, right? So there was the Bible, as the Bible's many things, but it certainly is philosophical in a great many of its stories. And so that was the most popular book. But other than that, I wanted to mention that because it's important. But otherwise, Ayn Rand's thing. Now, Ayn Rand didn't catch on because objectivism or individualism is antithetic to communism, and the whole rest of the universities in Hollywood and all these people, they wanted communism. That was going to be their path to success. So they managed to deride her, and I'm not saying that her idea was the best idea by any means, and I'm not saying that my book, Oreganism, is like hers. It's not like her philosophy whatsoever, but I'm just, as an example of a person who expressed their ideas in a fictional book, a novel, and presented it that way rather than an academic study, is what I've done with Oreganism. Now, people spend a lot of money and a lot of time on these campaigns, and they'll write a check to a candidate for $500 or $100 or whatever it may be, $4,700, and they'll spend a lot of time going to meetings. They'll spend a lot of time doing all kind of activities, whether it's the phone bank or the door-to-door stuff or whatever it may be. They'll spend a lot of time doing that. But if you have an opportunity to see a different idea, and it's going to take you a few hours and cost you $15, I don't understand why you don't give it a try. Now, I'm not saying that first of all, I think half the population can't even understand the book, frankly, or doesn't have the concentration ability to read the book and understand what they're reading. Reading comprehension is an art. It's a thing that, you can't fall asleep and forgot what you read yesterday, and you can't really remember, and at the end of the book, you think there was a guy and a girl and they were doing something, and you're not sure what. But this is a book that you can read for fun. You can read it as a beach book, because it is a fun story. But if you study the book and you see what the guy in the story does and how he brings his whole new method of government, this is a whole new method of government. This is something that's never been tried before. It's not kings or democracy or capitalism or communism or socialism, any of those things. It's an entirely new idea. But it's an idea that will drain the swamp. If you read the book and you study the book and you see what is done in the book, and then the hard part. Now you have to do the system. You can't just read it and say, yeah, somebody ought to try this. You have to get together the right group of people. Now, this is community organizer Saul Alinsky, right? Barack Obama had Acorn, and they got thousands of people involved, and they found ways to pay them, and it was really incredible, Acorn. Acorn's still around today under a new name. To make these changes, this isn't 3 or 4 people meeting at a diner. That is not going to do it. A large group of people has to fully understand this idea and adopt it and give it a really serious try. If you do it earnestly, you'll have success. It'll work. And since what everybody's doing now is not working, election after election, there's virtually no change, right? In fact, I hate the word change. I can't believe I said it. Election after election, there's no improvement. There is no improvement in how much the government respects the Constitution, respects the voter, has the public interest at heart. It's getting further and further, the us and them of it, the gap is increasing. The ivory tower is getting taller, and we down below, less and less influence. So something has to be done. I do have a proposal. I don't know anybody else who has a proposal. Okay, well, a very humbling thing just happened. I was droning on, and on the camera, the screen popped up that said, your video card is full. So I guess that's somebody's way of telling me that I've talked too long, which is not uncommon for me. But the good news is, I think, in the interim, the lava light has come to life. I'm always happy to see that. So I really want to execute Oregonism. The plan, as told in Oregonism, can work if a group of dedicated people understand it and take it seriously and execute it. I will be available for consultation, answer your questions, clear up any ambiguities. It's something that if you want to win the election in 2020, if you want to win it in 2024, 26, you're going to have a new innovative plan. What's being done time after time is not working. I could give you a list of people who consistently lose and who consistently do the same thing over and over and over. So thank you for indulging me. I am Fred Sotilli. This is the Voters Union of Accountability Nation. Thanks again, and I really appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon. So long.